Welcome to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, coming straight to you from Rock and Roll, USA, covering the latest and greatest in educational leadership trends, news, and awesomeness for principals all over the world. Now, here are your hosts, the boss, John Ross, and the Doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio.
Welcome back to the Rockstar Principles Podcast. We're here with our excellent Neumann Cohort, our wonderful class that's been doing a podcast segment each week. And today we're going to be talking about, debating, agreeing, who knows, the article about New Jersey changing their teacher certification standards. If you've been following us on Twitter, which many of you do, you've seen that John and I have been carrying out a vicious Twitter debate, primarily among ourselves. As hard as we try, we can't get anyone else to participate.
I've noticed.
Yeah.
Dr. I.
Thanks, Mr. Green. Prior to today, you didn't even know what Twitter was.
Wow.
That's true.
So how have you noticed that?
His
His custodian told me.
He's probably listening to this right now.
Bob Gearing, principal over at Euclid Hills, wonderful principal, one of our Downingtown friends here, hired, was it a head custodian, Bob, or was it just a shift custodian?
Head custodian.
Okay, so new building head custodian, maybe the most important position in the building, and Bob realized very quickly that his head custodian is more technologically savvy than he is.
On this one particular issue. Yes.
We might maybe a future segment, John, will be a technology debate between Bob and his head custodian.
There you go.
That would be, we get listeners with that.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So anyway, as you know, the gist of the article, if you've read it or haven't read it, is that New Jersey is upping their teacher certification standards. Is this a good idea? Is it a bad idea? What's the intent? Is there political motivation? Let's talk.
I think it's a great idea. I didn't even realize that you could get a certification with a lower than a B. I mean, I went to graduate school and I didn't undergrad as a teacher training person. So I think a minimum GPA of 2.75 or 3.0 seems very reasonable to me. I don't see any reason why anyone would be opposed to it. Plus the fact that we have so many more teachers than jobs that are available, it's a good way to kind of wean down the pool a little bit.
All right, so
Yes, be shocked.
Mike's
Come to the dark side.
Yep.
Mike's pointing out a key point in the article, if you didn't read, that they would up the minimum GPA for teacher certification to a 2.75, and currently, was it a 2.5 or
2.5, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it would up that. All right.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with Mike because I feel like even though there is a statement in the article that you can have a high GPA, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a good teacher. I agree with that, but I think that if you want good teachers, you have to find people that also value education. And if you are, if you have a C average in school, to me, I don't feel like you're working really hard. I feel like you should be, I don't know, a 3.0 is pretty reasonable. I don't feel like it's not like they're saying a 4.0 or even a 3 point. A high 3 point something. We're just saying a 3.0 be average. I feel like most people can maintain a 3.0.
John's smirking in the corner right now because he's tallying the people agreeing with him. However, I don't disagree with these points. I don't disagree with these particular points. So
What do you disagree with?
we'll get there. We'll get there. I don't want to bias the conversation.
He's trying to wait for somebody to say something that lets him jump all over the point to make his point.
I would agree with the higher standards and accountability piece, but I think higher ed needs an overhaul in different areas. And I'm just going to speak selfishly as a math person. My qualifications, the courses I had to take were the same as if I was an actuary major. So to me, I didn't see the point in taking applications of linear algebra, abstract algebra, synthetic geometry. I would have rather had to take courses like how to teach geometry, how to teach algebra, how to teach calculus. And there I think the grades are more meaningful because there's a difference between, and again I'm being selfish, there's a big difference between getting a C or a B in abstract algebra, which has nothing to do with high school mathematics, and a C or a B in how to teach algebra. So I really think that there needs to be more of a facilitation of discussions with K-12 organizations, superintendents, and teacher prep programs, just because there's such a disconnect there in terms of you get everything slammed into like one course versus a continuum of courses because of all the I'll call them crap courses you have to take to fulfill your requirements as an undergrad.
I think you.
Did the article, just before we go off Josh's point, did the article mention at all about any overhaul of coursework, or was it just standards?
It didn't mention much, but I was actually going to piggyback on that because I think the one line the article said about the one article the one quote was that just because you have a high GPA doesn't mean you're going to be a good teacher, and I get that. That's where I think I agree with an overhaul, but I think it needs to be more focused on some of the social areas of education. I think, you might have a not so great GPA in academics, but I think we need to be focusing more of these programs on having kids having potential teachers understand the social aspects of how to make students better, the ways to motivate. Yeah. I don't know if you want to say course in motivation or even courses in identifying issues with kids,
right.
as far
understanding child poverty, and growing up in poverty, things like that.
And like I was talking to a buddy of mine who, he made the asinine comment about arming teachers or armed security guards. He said, it's not. School safety isn't a gun issue; it's a mental health issue, and I think our budding teachers need to have more of an education in those areas. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that are going to make people a strong teacher.
I think if you ask a principal what they're looking for in a teacher, you get way down the list till you start getting to good GPA and dare I say, really smart. Not that doesn't help make a great teacher, but my guess is that's really far down on the list. We talk about building connections and working hard and dedication to strong pedagogy, but I don't know at what point people aren't smart enough to do that who are college graduates.
I agree, Bob, to a certain extent, and I'm going to name drop here. When Nick and I talked to Todd Whitaker back in the fall, and I'm not doing that on purpose, but one of the things that he said that really kind of changed my whole way of thinking was that mediocre leaders hire mediocre people. That if you have a mediocre superintendent, they're going to hire mediocre principals, and mediocre principals are going to hire mediocre teachers. That runs right down the line. So while you say that, I don't think all principals think that way. Number one, I think there are, and I know for a fact, there are people that look at the GPA. But even bigger issue to me, and I agree with what you're saying, I don't look at that stuff either when I'm hiring. I don't pay any attention to GPA when I'm hiring. The bigger issue to me is that there are people that have no business being in the profession. That skated by with the GPA, that skated by, just barely made it through the program, just barely passed the test that they need to test. And here they are sitting right next to the person and have just as much an opportunity to interview as the person who has the outstanding GPA. That, you know what I mean? I just feel like it's too damn important, that the job is just way too important for us to settle for any less than somebody that is the best. The people that are at least of the upper echelon, not even the best, but at least in the upper echelon.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You touched on a couple of different arguments there. One of them is the correlation or cause and effect between a high GPA and the ability to be a great teacher. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that exists. But your other insinuation or correlation that lazy or not or just skating by, nobody wants that in their school. Mm-hmm. But you should see that and pick that up through.
You absolutely should.
And that person should never be in the school.
You're absolutely right. But
there's a lot of lazy straight A people out there too.
But we don't see it. There's people that are in the profession that just have no doggone business being in the profession.
And there's no focus on the content. I mean, I'm a secondary social studies teacher, and there is a wide variety of knowledge content area. Like if you have a U.S. history teacher, there's some U.S. history teachers in my building that I just have so much respect for because they have such a deep knowledge of their content. Mm-hmm. And there's others that I go, maybe not so much. And I don't think there's enough focus on that. And I don't know if GPA would be, but definitely content knowledge and smarts and interest in the material it's not focused on enough. Definitely at the secondary level.
And we talk a lot about wanting respect for our profession. I'm wanting to be, shown the respect that we feel we deserve, like you see in other countries and other cultures, the way teachers are revered and held up. We're not going to get that as long as we have to play to this lowest common denominator all the time. We're not going to get that as long as we have people that are getting into the profession that barely got out of college.
And
it should be the higher end of the people that are getting into the profession.
This is where I deviate from, not that I disagree, I agree with that. However, my feeling with this has been from the beginning. I read the article and almost couldn't process any of the details because I was envisioning the New Jersey lawmakers sitting around having this discussion and saying, let's look at Finland. Finland is the model for the world. Okay, well, Finland has the best scores and they have the best teachers. Well, that's what we need to do. We need these high standards. Only the top 15% of students coming out of high school in Finland can be teachers. So let's make the standards higher. That'll get us the better teachers. Completely ignoring the socioeconomic facts that Finland, which is a completely different country, completely different way that they fund, completely different, and you name it, it's different in almost every way. However, in the 70s, they said, our top priority is education, and they funded it through the roof. The top 15% is what they let into education, but they pay for their degree, they pay them a living stipend, they pay for master's work beyond that, and then they're almost guaranteed placement. In a system where teachers are already respected because it's been built over 30 years, and because even the teaching methods there, they're given multiple periods and time frames over the week where they're collaborating, they're not teaching. It's like being a doctor, and they're paid well over there. So it's New Jersey says, let's do what Finland's doing without doing any of the stuff Finland's doing, just make our standards higher. I guess my feeling is it's not going to work. It's not going to attract better candidates out of high school unless there's something to attract them beyond just the great people who already want to be teachers. Maybe there's great lawyers or
Do you think someone's going to
doctors.
be turned away from doing this because they have to get a 3.0 GPA?
No, it's not that I think they'll be turned away. It's that I don't think it's going to attract any additional great candidates who are otherwise going to become doctors or lawyers or nurses or whatever else.
Right, but so it couldn't turn anybody away because any of those motivated people you're talking about wouldn't worry about a 3.0 minimum GPA.
Agree completely, but and again, I'm extrapolating. My feeling is that they're trying to get quote unquote the top 15% because we're not getting that now. I mean, seriously, look at the pool of candidates. John and I were talking about this. We've talked about a number of times on the podcast. When we look at teachers who are in our buildings or in someone else's buildings, and we literally say, let's think back to the day that person was hired. Who sat across from a table and said, you know what? I want that person teaching kids in my building. How does it happen? And yet we have 300 and 400 people applying for every job that there is. So I don't know. Again, maybe it's more of a soapbox thing for me. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's where I'm coming from on it.
Maybe it addresses too. We've talked in this course before about too much emphasis being pushed on kids going into four-year colleges, and that you have school districts who are pushing for 100% enrollment in a four-year institution. I mean, I don't know if is a 3.0 too much to ask. I just think back to my own experience. If I would have gotten anything lower than that, my parents would have closed the books, and I would have been looking for another way to pay for college. I don't know.
Not to segue too far off, but driving in to teach this other course, which is that not West Reading, Shillington, Rob.
It's Shillington is its own little borough, but it's right on the outside of Reading.
Southwest. Okay, so I'm teaching a course in a location that's southwest of Reading, closer to where inner city Reading would be. And there was an advertisement for Berks Catholic, a big giant billboard that said 95% of Berks Catholic graduates go to college. Was it 98? Was it 98? Maybe it's okay. So even more. And the first thing I thought of was our conversation the other week, whereas we were talking about why do you have to go to college? There's so many other avenues out there, but
I think that does a little bit different because it's a private school. I think a private school track is more geared towards getting a kid to a four-year college.
Okay, I completely agree, but don't you think in some way they were also digging at the Reading schools saying, hey, you pay for these Catholic schools and your kid's going to go to college, not become a plumber.
I don't think there's any school that 95% of the kids should go to a four-year college. I can't even envision that. as a high school teacher, I went to private school. 95% of the kids I graduated with from high school should not have gone to 4-year college. No way.
Not that demographic. I don't know. I mean.
Well, I mean, that's not the school I went to, but the school I went to became that school.
Oh, okay.
But, I graduated with 96 kids, and we were out of, I think, 92% went on to college, and I thought that was a pretty accurate number at that time as far as who should go. Because, when you're paying tuition, you have a lot of parents who by the time they get to high school, they're pulling out of private school. So they're not going to pay their tuition if, their kid's struggling and they grade hard.
So my whole point about Finland, getting back to your argument about paying them right, is twofold. Number one, the situation that we're in right now in terms of the economy, talking about increasing starting salaries for any position is just not on the table right now. And to me, because of that, I feel as though you have to begin somewhere. And I think the place to begin is to begin by making the candidate pool better. And let's take the people that are just getting into the profession now. The horse has already left the barn for the people that have their degrees and are waiting tables and are doing things other than teaching. That's already done.
Yep.
The die's been cast for them. So let's take the people that are contemplating getting into the profession or just getting into the profession and raise the standard and make it clear to them that, look, this is what you are going to have to do. If you want to become a teacher, if you want to, and I'm doing air quotes, have your summers off, this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to maintain this minimum GPA. You're going to have to meet these criteria in order to become an educator. And then you begin to create a pool of better candidates. It's going to be a smaller pool, and it's going to be a higher quality pool. And I would argue till the ends of the earth that pool will still be there. That pool's not going to go anywhere. That pool of people, we're never going to be at a lack of teaching candidates, no matter how high you raise the standards and how low you pay the people. There's still going to be people there. There's no way this country's ever going to get to the point where we have too few teachers.
That's not true everywhere.
In America?
I don't think it's. I
In Pennsylvania, what you're saying is true.
South
But now
Dakota.
there's so many in Pennsylvania, they're leaving to go to other states.
Yeah.
I know a half a dozen people that have left the state to go get jobs in other places
but I
because
think Bob
Pennsylvania is so overbooked.
You mean
So
there's a
my point
shortage
is,
in other-
we're
yeah.
producing so many of them in Pennsylvania. We're supplying them to South Dakota, South Carolina. We're getting them to other states.
Yeah,
So
no,
let's make that pool and raise the bar for that pool. And the argument is we're doing better for our kids. We're creating better candidates, better knowledge, deeper breadth of knowledge people for our kids. Then you can begin to make the argument about how these people who have higher GPAs, who came out of college at a higher standard, you can begin to make the argument that those people deserve a better pay raise, a better starting salary. You can make that argument once you have that as a way to support that argument, because right now you don't.
Yeah, no, that's a
You're
the reasoning
weeding
there
out,
works.
You would be weeding out the people that got from a 2.5 to like a 2.99, so that would be weeding one. That's one tool. But I feel like what we're all talking about, what we're all constantly talking about, is that a lot of people can get a 3.0. It doesn't make them a good teacher.
Right, absolutely.
So then the next step would be, how do you start to weed out the 3.0 and above who can't make connections with adults? Because if they can't make connections with adults, they're definitely not going to make connections with kids in the classroom. Or do you go through interview processes? I mean, that would be the next
And I
step.
think that goes back to what was being said earlier about overhauling the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kind of what they're saying here is that they're implying that that's going to be a part of it. That the teacher educating system needs more of that kind of stuff in it.
They alluded to in the article some performance test that wasn't established yet, or they don't know what it's going to look like. But I'd be curious to see what exactly is that going to look like. Is it an opportunity to help say, hey, you need control of the classroom, you need control of your content, you need to have utter control, but also have that compassion, have everything kind of come through when you are on center stage with these children. But I'm curious to see what would happen, what that would look like.
And who develops that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Penn as an elementary principal. You tap into and you see some of those Penn State grads who do the year-long student teaching experience from there. And that is a stringent GPA criteria to get into. And then when you see and interview those people, you see a clear-cut difference between them. And there's a huge difference between student teaching 180 days and student teaching 8 weeks out of placement. But I agree with what you were saying, John. Those people are going to be there because, in my opinion, all of us sitting here got an education because in some time, somebody was an influence in our life in education and motivated us to be that. Whether it was because somebody really righted us or somebody wronged us. And those people will always be motivated. To me, it's a calling. Education is a calling.
Sure.
Whether it's teacher, principal, whatever it is, they're going to be there.
But let me argue that point just a little. For example, when we got into education, and most of us are around the same time frame of entering into the educational field, the salaries, the contracts being negotiated were good. Our retirement system was phenomenal. Now, I was going to become a teacher regardless, but if I were coming out of high school today and I was seeing that, hey, that awesome pension system which says if I work, forget that no one should expect it to be guaranteed, forget the real world. That was a perk. Because I was going to be a teacher, I might never make $1 million, but I know what my retirement fund is going to look like. That's going to be gone. There's going to be a 401k. Whatever it's going to look like, it's not going to be even remotely the same. So, I mean, I feel I don't disagree. There's definitely the people at the very top who, no matter what they will, but maybe the other people who are great are going to question it a little bit more and say, gosh, there's so many of the other things that really that were perks.
That's the new normal to me.
Yes.
That's the new normal in America. Because just look at healthcare. Look at how our diamond healthcare packages that we've had for so long in education are going by the wayside. Blame it on whatever you want to blame it on.
Right.
I'm not going to get into a political commentary about it, but they're going. The new normal for healthcare is we're no longer going to be able to just have $10, $20 co-pays on office visits and that's it. We're going to be shelling out 10%, 15% before we even sit to see a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So, the new normal for people for their retirement is they're going to have a lot more responsibility. There's going to be a lot more of them having to pay individually into it. There's not going to be these golden parachutes waiting for people when they get out of the profession.
And that's why it concerns me that even some of those great potential candidates might say, I want to become a nurse.
But that's not going to be in any profession. There's not going to be pension systems. PSERS,
not pension.
PSERS, the Pennsylvania retirement system, is the single greatest public employee retirement system in the United States of America.
I would agree with that.
It's been the most solid, the most stable, the best payoff for teachers. So you got nowhere to go but down. Especially in the way the economy is,
right? But
that's not going to be there.
What I'm saying though is those people who were let's say called, going out of high school though, now that they're seeing these other professions, and I use nursing as the example because there's tremendous growth and job availability there. Their standards went up, and was it 2018? I think by 2018, if you're a nurse now without a bachelor's, you have to go back and get your bachelor's or else you're out of a job by, I think it's 20, I'm probably wrong, 2018 or whatever. But
just think about that statement you just said. There are nurses without bachelor's degrees.
Yeah.
There's teachers without bachelor's degrees.
Yep.
There's people teaching that don't have bachelor's degrees.
I'm not disagreeing with any of it. I'm just saying I think we need to fight to have the profession as incentivized as possible so we can get the best people. Not just making the standards harder, that we also have to make it attractive.
When you're looking at 8% unemployment in the country, I don't think we have any problem finding people to do jobs.
He's right. It's never gonna go back. He's absolutely right, and there's never gonna be a shortage of teachers. Certainly not around here, but I think anywhere, because we're turning out so many college graduates that are looking for white collar jobs. The ratio is there's 4 people looking for one job. There's all kind of data like that, and across the board, there's a few sectors. You mentioned nursing. Eventually, that's going to will get saturated,
right?
Because they'll keep throwing people into it. Then it'll be saturated.
It's like how about 10, 12 years ago, law school became the new MBA.
And nobody can get a job as a lawyer anywhere. Nobody.
Whereas our parents' generations were all getting MBAs. We got out of college. It was go to law school. Yeah. Now people can't find it.
Well, I'm going to be gray and say I do partially agree with you. However, then pay the ones who are doing the best. Don't pay
there you go,
everybody.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking, baby.
Because I'm not saying merit pay,
right?
Because there's flaws in that system. But he and I are both social studies teachers, and he's working, walking in here at exactly 7:30 and checking out exactly 2:30 to go coach. And more worried about his coaching responsibilities than his teaching responsibilities, and neither one of us has a PSSA, and we're both at Masters plus 60, both making $100,000 a year as a teacher. I see a major flaw in that system if I'm the one that's coming in at 6:30, working with kids in the morning, staying till 5, working with kids, and differentiating and all that. And that's where I see I get frustrated with the pay piece because even as administrators, there's teachers who make more than us in a 9-month window, let alone a 12-month window. And you think about some of the things they do. They were smart. They moved over as fast as they could, and kudos to them. But I just the pay piece makes me wary because some of our highest salary teachers are the ones who have checked out a long time ago.
And I think that contributes more, Josh, to the negative perception of our profession to a large degree, because Daniel Pink, and we talked about it a little bit last week, but the scientific research clearly shows by paying people more, as long as you're paid a fair wage, so you have to establish the boundary as a fair wage. As long as you're paid a fair wage, extra incentive monetarily on top of that isn't going to create output or productivity. However, it can be a demotivator when you describe the situation you just described, and we see it every day. All of us witness that every day or get frustrated with it.
Well, it affects your culture. It really can affect your culture.
Then I would make an argument as well saying, since the principals are going to have to make those decisions, we should get paid more because those are tough decisions.
I think, I have sensitivity about coaches, but I'm just going to say this. There are people that do leave and go to other jobs, but I think we also have to look at the bigger picture. As a parent, would I rather a teacher coach my kid, or would I want some Joe Schmo off the street?
Oh, I'm not taking shot at coaches. I coached 3 sports when I taught.
I know
but
what
my
you're
kids
saying.
in my
You're just
classroom
saying,
came before the kids on the field.
Absolutely, and that should be the case. But if there's a person that has to leave for another responsibility because they are working with our kids in the district or teaching, I feel like the people that we read about in the paper that do things that are wrong. I just was reading something the other day about another coach that was fondling kids or either cursing at kids on the field. They're just inappropriate.
No, I'm not. What I'm talking about is, we know these people. If there's a choice between, I'd like you to attend this PD on differentiated instruction, or there's an opportunity to go to a clinic because it's going to teach you tactical defense on soccer, there are certain people that are going to go, I want nothing to do with differentiation. I'm all over that soccer defensive clinic.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I'm talking
That's
about.
different.
I'm not. I, in my opinion, I think you want to tap in and have coaches who are teachers because of that connection with kids and that relationship.
Yeah, I'd take a building teacher that never played soccer a day in their life to coach kids soccer over a community person who's an expert and runs 3 camps and has coached every single kid since they were 5 years old. I'd take the teacher in a heartbeat. As long
I
as they're a
agree,
good
and that's
person
not
that knows the
my
kids.
point. Was more of there are a ton of people who got into teaching to be coaches, and are coaches first and teachers second.
There
And
are.
those are the
You're
ones that I have
And
a tremendous issue.
They're the ones
And we all know
that you
them.
shave off
Yep.
if you raise the standards.
Yep. And that's what that's what I didn't mean to go that way, because I was a 3-sport coach and loved it, and it's a huge time investment. But just as long as coaches need to understand that the kids in their classroom come first.
And that just goes back to having or wanting somebody who is a good teacher, not necessarily somebody who knows their content, which is good, but first and foremost being a good teacher. I see so many student teachers go through. They are okay as teachers, but it just seems like their content is what they know really well. And in our district, student teachers have to have a certain grade point average, which leads us back to that. When they have such a high grade point average, I'm seeing less and less good teachers now. Not saying, and we're talking in our district about the difference between a 3 and a 3.5, and they want a certain, really high number, and I would rather take a 3. I'm not saying anything substandard, 2.5, but I'm saying I'd rather have a 3 who is a very good teacher than have somebody that's a 3.5 and is sort of a mediocre teacher but knows their content. So I think that's pretty much what we're saying here, even related to the coaching. We do want somebody who's going to be a good teacher, a good coach, not necessarily somebody that knows that content or knows the sport but doesn't know how to teach and convey the message to the students and know how to work with students.
And the added benefit, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, I'm going to shut up about it, but the added benefit, because that reminded me of a point, I promise, is that I think this would also put pressure back on the colleges if you say to the colleges that they have to have a 3.0, then the colleges, it's going to dissuade the mediocres from even getting into the profession. But the colleges are also going to provide more support to these kids to help them get that 3.0. because they're going to say, here we've got a kid that's got a 2.9, 2.8. What can we do? What's going wrong? Where are we making mistakes? It's going to kind of be, the pressure's going to be on them, because they're not going to want to. They're going to want to be able to say, here's how many kids we've turned out that have gotten into our program, rather than having, just like Newman's doing for us. Newman wants to make sure, that everybody in our cohort stays through our cohort to the very end, for them, for their sake. They like to think that it's altruistic and they care about us, and that's fine. They probably do too. But they also want to be able to say that they had a cohort that ran the entire length of the program.
Well, I think PVOS is going to help with that, because I know in my district there's a tremendous hesitancy now with teachers wanting to have student teachers moving forward, and a lot of universities are saying why, and it's because we want 100% dedicated, qualified person in there, and I think that is going to help spawn a little bit of the change in terms of what they need to do in higher ed, in producing people, because the teachers are not going to want to give up that accountability to somebody who could be potentially that mediocre person.
Especially when you look at math, you are taking a giant risk.
Yep.
Giant risk. Maybe that solves the problem to some degree, John. Maybe it'll be weeded out from the schools down, just because of what the PVAS and the value add it's going to be. It's interesting. All right, well, that was a good one.
Passion.
Everybody, all right? Well, that's John. Take us home.
Go home.
That's not what I meant, but yeah. Good enough.
You mean we're done? You mean class is over? Take us home?
Damn it.
Is that what you're saying?
Damn it, Sky.
Thanks for helping RSP top the charts in the Edu podcast world. Keep it real with Twisted Steel and School Appeal.